chop off the ATM machines. Because the moon in Cancer, 8th house, other people's money. I was providing nurturance, Cancer, in the milk to other people being lucky. So now the puppy's ATM closed. So what was it? The moon in Cancer that gave me Cancer in the 8th? Or the Mars in Capricorn that made me be ambitious and make so much money because it comes from the 2nd? Who cares? I lived it out. So if your client cares about that, you give them both scenarios and they can decide. This is how I had to live it out. That's what matters. I became my alliance with my father, not with my mother. The first Cancer, I became the alliance with my mother. And funny enough, I was telling her yesterday, I needed to heal my mother and my kids in that first Cancer. And now it's the alliance with myself, where I'm giving my mother and my father back their stuff, and I'm gonna die and reborn. And chemo kills every cell. You're constantly killing good and bad cells. So you see that the story is exactly how it's going to play out. So I don't have to have guilt that I didn't do it right, quote unquote, the first time. And TJ left because of the Cancer. Maybe he was never supposed to be around to take me to chemo or anything like that. Maybe that wasn't part of his story. I don't know. Maybe we would have gotten stronger as a result of fighting this Cancer this way, and then I wouldn't have lived out my Saturn in the 7th. I wish that would have happened. I didn't want to get divorced, but those are certain things that you just see they have to happen. So I have no regret, no guilt about, I had to do it that way. That was the turn of the triangle. So this is my 3rd Saturn. Saturn in the signs. So your Saturn is a figure. It is an actual authority person that is like the head of the house, la cabeza, okay? And it also represents, in general, grandparents. So it's always authority, and it's always the grandparents. So mother, father, grandparents, more or less. It is also something directly related to society that your family valued and they projected onto you. So some Piscean version, whether it was the astrology from your grandparents, whether it was Christianity, whether it was being a saint, the Virgin Mary, because it's the house of Virgo, colored with Pisces. No, a ti te pusieron de monja lo que no pudieron. The chastity belt came right off. But it is a value that your family pushed onto you that you have to live out. Okay? So this is important for clients because this is a value system they have in their bucket. And they fight against this value system. That it's right or it's wrong. Y ahí, and with someone like you in the 6th house, that can cause autoimmune disorder.
For sure.
Because you're criticizing. With me, I'm not a good wife. I'm not a good enough person. I suck as a wife. No. I married 2 narcissists. You know, so it's a value system that the client has so embedded, whether it was spoken or unspoken. So right off the bat, if you don't know anything else to start with the client, the sign of the Saturn, you can tell them this is a value system that they have, even when you don't have the time. Because you have the sign, you don't have the house. That this is a value system that is destroying them. That's a great place to start. Okay, when the mother was the head of the household, Saturn can represent the mother, because oftentimes people think it's just male, but now we're going to see a lot more of that because there's so many more single mothers. So you have to think of the generations, and you have to think of la etapa donde creció el cliente. So for instance, my children saw me as head of household, whereas I saw my father. So my father would be more of the authority plus that woman. My mom was not. In my story, my mother was more of the submissive. The other woman, the cult leader, was the female authority, and my dad was the male authority. That's what screwed me up. I was telling my mom yesterday. I said the first cancer was for me to put you back in your place. That my mother and my father were my mother and my father. That it wasn't my father and the cult leader. I understood that was the first reason for my cancer, and to heal with my kids. Now that my mom and my dad are right in their rightful place, now that I have the alliance, now it's my turn. So my story's a little different, but oftentimes, and now we're going to see this more and more, these people who have gurus, so the kids are going to hear that the mother is off with the guru, or the dad and the mom are off with the friggin'. And in our Western culture, that is not normal. In India, that is normal. So the Vedic chart is different. Because culturally, everybody in India has a guru. That is part of their life. One of my dear teachers, when the divorce, she goes, "Can't you guys go to a guru?" She was speaking from her Indian culture. I go, "No, that doesn't work like that in our relationship." Because we speak from our value system, and culturally it has something to do with it. So that's why we have to understand where the person's coming from their parents, from their culture, their society, their generation, even where they grew up in terms of country or city. Because it's going to affect all of it. Okay. Saturn in the signs. So, the sign where you have Saturn is where you are transmitting a generational structure. You are literally bound by this. There is no way around it. Saturn by house are the themes that your family struggled with, especially in society. By house. Those are the themes that the family struggled. So for instance, 6th house could be health. My house could be maybe the social graces of marriage. So let's just say maybe in my old generations were a lot of widows. Saturn's death, it's not only divorce, it could be widows. So that could be an example. So there was always a woman who was either widowed or la pobrecita, that kind of thing, if they were widowed, or someone else had to take care of her. So maybe I rewrote the story by being divorced twice. I'm the only daughter that got divorced. And no one's going to take care of me, but I'm going to, because our subconscious has no other thing to do but the opposite. Instead of being taken care of, I took care of. That's just an example. So the house tells you societally. So did you ever see Gone with the Wind?
No, just
Oh my God. Okay, there's a scene where Scarlett O'Hara is it's when the Civil War breaks out, and everyone's broke and everything is destroyed, and she goes back to the plantation and it's just dark. There's nothing. There's no vegetables, nothing growing. And she grabs the dirt and she's like, "I'll never go hungry again." I lived that. When I saw that scene after my divorce, my first divorce, something shifted in me. I don't know what happened, but something clicked, and I'm like, that. And I didn't know any of this back then. But I know that scene did something to me. It triggered something. So what happened was, that she turned out to be all about money and power and wealth. And even though I'm not all about money and power and wealth, I had to be the one that paid. No one would ever be in control, so to speak, that I would go hungry again kind of thing. Hungry again meaning that someone would be in charge of my food or whatever. Because there's different ways. In her case, it was the war and the plantation, not giving. And you see, exactly, different types of food. And you see in the next scene, ya, the new Scarlet. Que estaba, que en la búsqueda, que el rico, que el dinero, que la cosa. She had I'm telling you, when I saw that movie, I'm like, oh my God. It resonated ridiculous. If you just Google the clip, Scarlett O'Hara, Never Go Hungry or whatever, you'll see. And sometimes it's those situations in the ancestral lineage that we flip around and why we live it that way. So I didn't kill my kids like many generations. My mother lost a child, my aunt lost a child, my grandmother lost a child. I lost a child by the custody. I did it a little different. It was still lost. Moon in the 8th. So we're constantly revising the story